Welcome to OLC 40 Class 6. We are on Unit 1, and I am Jillian Percy. As always, these are the different ways that you can reach me. I'm in the studio right now, and the number to reach me is 1-800-465-7144. Later on, I will be in the office, 1-800-667-3703. You can fax me your work at 1-800-463-7852. Email is jillian.percy@nnecschools, don't forget that s.org. Facebook and YouTube are both the same, capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. Okay, I wanted to remind you, we have these reading logs that need to be filled in. They are part of your final portfolio that you hand in during the last week of the course, which is a good chunk of your marks. So you want to make sure you do this. This is a blank page. On the next page, I'm going to give you an example of how it might look when it is filled out, because I don't want you to leave this to the end of the course and then suddenly be kind of frantic about it. So here is an example, okay? I put the date, I just put the month and then the day. So 0905, I read a magazine. The text was Modern Quilts, no particular author, because it's a magazine. I read 5 pages, and the main idea was that there were some easy quilts for newbies or new quilters. On the 6th, I read some job ads, help wanted at a school, probably spent 5 minutes reading some jobs that I might apply to. 0907, a shopping list. It was Gookum's list, so she's the one that wrote it. It's just 1 page. Gookum was sick and needed some groceries. 0908, I read some Facebook messages from my friend Peter. Probably spent about 20 minutes talking back and forth. Peter had just broken up with his girlfriend and wanted to tell me all about it. So these are an example. It does not have to be novels. Any kind of reading that you do at all is absolutely valid. You can tell me the time spent or the pages read, either one, whichever one works better. Sometimes it makes more sense to use time. Sometimes it makes more sense to tell me the pages. And just like a basic sentence or two about what you were reading. That's really all I'm looking for. So you should be trying to fill one of these in every week, okay? Google Documents. I realize I've been talking about using Google Documents, and then I wasn't sure if everyone really understood how to locate it and use it. So I wanted to go over that quickly for anybody who wasn't sure. First, if you are a student with WASA, that means that you have a Google email with us, and therefore you automatically have access to Google Documents, whether you've ever used it or not. I'm going to walk you through the steps for how to locate it and how to use it. First, make sure that you've logged into your Google account, the one for WASA. If you have a personal one as well, don't use that one. Make sure you're using the WASA one, okay? Next, in your upper right-hand corner, there will be some little dots all in a little square. That is basically where you'll click to get your apps. Once you've clicked on it, you'll get this screen, and it lists all your apps. Sometimes you can see there's a little sidebar. You can keep on scrolling down if Google Docs doesn't show right at that spot. It might be near the bottom if you haven't used it ever, okay? So Google Docs is this one, little blue screen, and it says Docs, D-O-C-S. All right, once you click on that, this is what'll come up. It'll come up on your screen. It'll still say Docs, so you know you're there. There'll be a blank page and then a bunch of templates. You don't really need the templates. If you were writing like a resume or something, you might want to pull one of those up. But for us, just click on the blank screen. Once you've done assignments, they'll get stored down here. So if you've got, assignment you were working on yesterday and had to walk away from, click down here and pull it back up and keep on working. Once you're in Google Docs, here's what you'll see. There'll be a spot for a title. It'll say untitled document. And if you don't put a title in there, it'll save it as untitled document, which is fine if you only have one document. But if you ever do that more than once, then you've got to go in each time and figure out what it is. So I find it's best to title it right away, okay? If you know you're sitting down to work on your course and your assignment, right away, put in what's the class name, what's the assignment number or the name, either way, and what's your name. So for example, OLC 40, assignment 1, Jillian Percy, or ENG3E, rough copy of news report, Jillian Percy. Right here, you would just start writing. That would be fine. Don't worry about that part. Oh, it looks like something skipped. Oh yeah, here we go. I'm gonna move it over here. One important feature of Google Docs is that it saves as you go. And this is wonderful if you tend to forget to save your work. However, it's not always wonderful. I've sometimes had it override what I was doing and I forgot that it would be doing that because it works a little bit differently than Word if you're used to using Word from Microsoft Office. So in some of the assignments that we're doing, you need to hand me in a rough copy and the good copy. You don't want to overwrite it and just turn it into one big document because I'm going to mark the rough copy and the good copy. And sometimes the rough copy is worth just as much marks as the good copy. So when you do that, it's really, really important that you don't just make all your changes on your original rough draft. You need to make a copy of that rough draft and use it as your good draft and make all your copies, all your changes there. So let me show you what I mean. Uh, so up here, rough copy of assignment 5, go to the drop-down menu labeled File, go to where it says Make a Copy. You're going to click on that. And then this screen will pop up and you can see right here, it's kind of small, but it says copy of, and then whatever the assignment name is. At this point, this is a great time to rename it like good copy of assignment, whatever, okay? If you forget, you may later on not remember what you were doing with that. So I would rename it right then. That's a good spot to name it. And then you'd hit make a copy, okay? Now, the new copy should come up. So you should still have your rough copy in your files. And now you're working on your new copy, which is said, I would relabel as good copy so that I remembered and so that it was a very obviously different name. I have definitely been the type of person that accidentally rewrote over my both copies, which is never fun. Yeah, so that's really, really important, especially if it's an assignment where there has to be a rough and a good copy, okay? Now, the other thing, Google Slide, no, sorry, not Google Slides, Google Slides will do it too, but Google Docs technically will help you edit and revise, but it has its limitations. I'm going to show you what it's good for, but also what it is not good for, because it is not always good for everything, okay? Spelling mistakes will show up with a red squiggly line like this, but it won't always catch every single spelling mistake. So for example, I wrote, I can't wait to go eat at Fifth Avenue in Toluca with Marina, but I meant to write Miranda. It caught eat. It didn't catch the mistake in Miranda, probably because it's a name. So it didn't know. Maybe there is a name Miranda, right? So it didn't catch that. If I had been waiting for it to catch all those mistakes, it's that one slipped through, right? It also may not catch spelling mistakes where the word is spelled correctly, but it isn't exactly the word you meant to write. This is really common with homophones where the words sound alike, but they're spelled differently. So for example, on the side, it wrote 8, and I was meaning to write ATE perhaps. And instead I wrote 8 like the number. It didn't mark it as a spelling mistake. Well, because I spelled it right. It's not the right word, but I did spell it right. You can see though, it did give you a little blue line because it doesn't make any sense grammatically to have a number there. So it did sort of catch it, but you don't want to rely on it to catch every single spelling mistake. It's just a machine. It's going to make mistakes, okay? So the blue lines will catch grammatical mistakes again sometimes. If you look at this, there's about 3 or 4 mistakes in here. It only caught one of them, okay? It will sometime catch grammatical mistakes. That should have been an S, and it's putting a little wiggly blue line under there to point out, oh, you made a mistake here, please fix that. But take a look at it for a second and notice it made some other mistakes. What are some of the other mistakes that it made? Well, first of all, if the period's here, this should be a capital A because it's the beginning of a sentence. But then I wouldn't have a capital A here and a capital here. This would either become a small p or I would get rid of the and. It's kind of strange to start a sentence with and. So I probably would just cross that off, get rid of it, leave that p. Put a squiggly blue line under them. That's fine. but it doesn't catch everything. Well, but is one of those ones that you wouldn't really start a sentence with. It implies there's some more information. If I was making this as one sentence and I wanted to turn that into like one whole sentence, that would be great. But then I need to make sure I put a period. So you can see there's a bunch of mistakes. It only caught one of them. The other thing I found for some reason, every time I went to a new line, it wanted to make it as a capital letter, even when I didn't want it there and it didn't make sense. So be careful to notice that. Sometimes it just thinks that if you've hit the return button, that means you must be on a new sentence, which isn't always the case. So that's something to be cautious of. All right, we did that part. Okay. Are we already there? Hang on, I just want to make sure I didn't miss things. I kind of jumped over a few things here. Yep. Okay. Okay, review of all the work that we've completed. So far, we have done lessons 1, 2, 3. Okay, and so there are 13 assignments that need to be finished. I'm going to walk you through just kind of the names of them. Please take a few moments to check that you have handed these in. If you have not, take a moment, pause, try and find what the assignment is, and try and get it into me. There's no point sending in assignments for lesson 4 and 5 if you haven't finished these assignments first, okay? So lesson 1 is 5 assignments. Assignment 1 is about the 7 grandfather teachings. Assignment 2 is growing up in my community. Assignment 3 is my communication skills. Assignment 4 is temperament. Assignment 5 is the journal entry about me. Okay, so all those assignments are part of lesson 1. Lesson 2 has 4 assignments. The one about before reading, during reading, and after reading. And all of these are about the chapter 1 in Jimmy Comes Home. Remember, just the chapter, not the whole novel. Okay, do not feel that you've got to read the entire novel. And then you would write assignment 9, which is the journal entry about learning, where you're kind of reflecting on this whole process. For the last couple of days, we've been working on lesson 3. Lesson 3 has 4 assignments. What do people read? News report. We had to read a news report and then talk about it. Then we had to do a rough draft of our own news report. And then we were working on a final copy. And that may take a little while. It's okay to take a few days between these lessons if you need to, okay? So then we are moving on to lesson 4. Lesson 4 is called Sit Down and Write. And it's kind of based on a song. I can't play the song here because that would violate copyright issues. So I just have the words to the song. So we're going to talk about it a little bit. But you are welcome to look it up. So far during this course, you have read a variety of forms of writing, questions, assignment instructions, chapter in a novel, 2 news reports, and you have done some different types of writing yourself. Brainstorm your lists, point form, what I've called jot notes, full sentence answers, journal entries. It's easy to see that we read and we write or communicate for different purposes and different audiences at different times. Your subject, what you're writing about, sometimes we call that your topic, your audience, who you're writing for, and your purpose for writing, to inform, to persuade, or to entertain. All of these influence your choice of form. That is the type of writing, whether it's a report, a letter, an email, etc. It also affects your style and your tone, how you say what you say. A great example of how the above works is found in the following lyrics to a rap song that you can listen to on YouTube. Search for sitdownandwrite.avi or look up the following YouTube channel, SPEIDEL 55. Now, when you go to that, it'll have some little kids kind of singing along, looking kind of silly, but the rap song itself sounds great. Okay, so don't be put off by this silly video. Again, I wish I could play it for you guys, but instead I just kind of have to read it. Sorry that I can't wrap up. I'm not that good at this. So this isn't necessarily how everybody likes to learn, but I know some people love music and that this is a great way for them to learn. So I wanted to kind of tackle this way. Verse 1. Are you the type of writer who uses words as a lighter to ignite flames on fire as a means to inspire? Or are you the type of writer who writes for herself, for peace of mind, creativity, and mental health. Are you the type of writer who's quite sure and certain that you can't stand writing, reciting, and rehearsing? Or are you that hidden talent in the back of the class who loves to tell stories, but no one cared to ask? Are you a future journalist, playwright, or poet, developing your skills and you might not even know it? Are you an MC who's listened to the greats and writes rhymes with his iPod, records, and tapes? Are you an essay writer or do you prefer fiction? Concrete, abstract, vivid descriptions? Let's use these words to document real life. Collect your thoughts, grab a pen, sit down and write. And the chorus is sit down and write, sit down and write, sit down and write. Collect your thoughts, grab a pen, sit down and write. Okay, verse 2. First, you need some focus and a plan. Figure out what you're writing in the best way that you can. Ask yourself some questions that you think might be relevant. Access prior knowledge that will help you with development. Free write, brainstorm, and outline the elements. Refine your craft and write a first draft. Organize your thoughts, connect the future with the past. Now you're on your way to success real fast. Be open-minded. We all need feedback. Some readers think they're too good and don't need that. Embrace other input. Be willing to revise. Try to understand your work through someone else's eyes. Reevaluate, reassess, reorganize. Edit and re-edit. That's a word to the wise. Share your work with others. Try reading it out loud. Your finished product will be something that'll make you proud. And then it goes back to the chorus again. Sit down and write, sit down and write, sit down and write. Collect your thoughts, grab a pen, sit down and write. Writing is a form of self-expression, a way to liberate yourself from all oppression. It could be a teacher's plans for the next day's lesson, or a novelist who loves to keep you guessing. Writing helps you use imagination, whether you're in school or on vacation. I make music in planes and train stations. These lyrics are a form of relaxation. Writing is an absolute necessity. If I couldn't write, people would think less of me. I know it's not fair, but that's reality. So practice using words because that's the recipe. Writing is key communication. You'll need it for a job application after graduation. It's a form of conversation. All it takes is a little motivation. And then it goes back to the chorus again. And then verse number 4 says, now that you've learned all about the stages, pick up your pen and write words on pages. Like ancient language engraved and chiseled in stone, feathers dipped in ink, burnt coal, papyrus scrolls. Tell stories untold. Let lyrics unfold. Sometimes you just gotta let it go. Try the many different styles of writing you know. Step out of your comfort zone. That's how you grow. You could be a critic of music, theater, or sports, or a stenographer who documents the words in court. You could write long novels or stories that are short, create tales in braille, and type email. Any way you slice it, writing is essential. Grab a pad or a journal, a pen or a pencil. Your imagination has infinite potential. All right, so assignment 14 is 12 marks called Sit Down and Write. You are to answer the following questions about what we just read. Who do you think is the intended audience for this piece of writing? So who are they writing it to? Why do you think so? 3 marks, so you need to look for at least 3 sentences there. List 3 of the careers or types of work mentioned in the song where writing is an essential skill. Okay, if you don't remember, that's okay. Go back and reread it. Come up with 3 other careers you think would require good writing and or reading skills. 3 total. So again, you're getting a mark for each career you name. You've probably been taught the writing process in other classes. And the writing process is brainstorming for ideas, writing a rough copy, revising, editing, and producing a final copy. Sometimes they'll call that last stage publishing, okay, or presenting. Whether you have realized it or not, sit down and write teaches those same skills, but rather than using the form of an in-class discussion, a textbook, or an informative essay, the writing is presented as a rap song. You are to write a brief summary of this song in at least 4 sentences. What is it about, the main idea, and the supporting details. Okay, so you may have to reread it a few times, maybe take a few minutes to think about what's the main idea of each verse. Okay, for the supporting details, you don't want to mention just like any little thing, like, oh, it says to grab a pad or a pencil. No, what's like the main or the most important 4 things this song is trying to tell you about? Okay, that one is 6 marks. So you want to try and write a good chunk for that one. Let's see, where does it say? In at least 4 sentences. I would suggest you might want to try closer to 6. Unless you write very detailed sentences, it may be hard to get the marks you need with only 4. Okay. Oh, is that the same thing? Okay, it is. All right. Duplicated there. All right. Assignment 15. Editing a paragraph. This is 5 marks. Hopefully, the song has inspired you and shown you that writing is an important skill that you will need at home, at school, and at work. And right now, it is time to take a look at what that means and then complete the task below. You are to read the following paragraph and correct as many errors as you can. You are then to rewrite the paragraph with all the corrections that you made, okay? You can do it on handwritten or you can do it on the computer. So I'm going to read it to you. As I'm reading, think about what might be wrong in this paragraph, okay? When you choose a post-secondary institution to attend, there is many issues to consider. You must consider the type of program you wish to pursue and determine which schools offer the most valuable course of study for your goals. You and your family must discuss the relative costs of various programs, deciding which school are affordable to you. Your academic ability must be considered in terms competition and grade requirements. Your personality must be taken into consideration as well. Are you prepared to work hard and be committed to doing well in your courses? Do you prefer large classes or small? Are you prepared to move if necessary to a bigger community or city? Do you function best in a structured or loose setting? Choosing a post-secondary institution is a serious endeavor encompassing many different elements regarding the school, your goals, your abilities, and your preferences. Now, one reason why I read that out loud, I find if you just kind of look at a paragraph, it can be easy to miss so many problems with it. Even for myself, I just find if I read it out loud, sometimes the problems become really obvious the moment you go and say them and like, oh, that word doesn't sound right. Wait, that doesn't sound right. So I really encourage you to read this out loud to yourself as you're doing this, because I think it really can be a big help. Now, you may be looking at that and thinking, I really don't know. Okay. So we're going to talk about some of the things that you might want to look for. Okay. Obviously, spelling, grammar, usage, punctuation. But sometimes people don't know, well, yeah, okay, vaguely I know I'm supposed to look for that, but I don't even really know what you mean. So I'm going to kind of talk in more depth about what I mean here, okay? Okay, editing, or what we sometimes call like the fussy stuff or the nitpicky stuff. Students usually want to hand in their best work, but I find that besides spelling mistakes, students sometimes aren't really sure what to do to make their writing better. So we are going to spend a bit of time going over some of the things to look for when you're editing your rough drafts or your assignments to be. I'm going to present a lot of different information. It's okay to only tackle some of it this week and begin to gradually incorporate more items that you look for as you edit. As we covered earlier, you cannot rely on the computer or the software program to catch every mistake. It often won't, and sometimes students are very surprised to discover that. You will need to be the main editor of your work. The computer might help, but it does not have the final say. Remember, it is ultimately a machine. It doesn't know everything. I know people are inclined to I'm going to trust the machine, but you can't always. You've got to make sure that you bring all your talents to this, because I guarantee you may not realize it, but you have more talents than that computer as far as editing goes. Okay. First thing, this is one of the most obvious things, and it is one of the very first things that I look for. So please, please, please pay attention to this. Sentence fragments. Sorry. Every sentence has to have three things: the subject, which is the noun or the pronoun, the predicate, which is the verb and the rest of the sentence, and it has to be a complete thought. It has to make sense, basically. If it's missing any one of those things, it is considered incomplete or a fragment, and it is therefore wrong. Fixing these are pretty simple. You just need to add the missing part to the sentence. So for the first one, the sentence says, went to the store. Okay, what's wrong with that sentence? What is it missing? It's missing the subject, right? Well, okay, so that's easy. If it's missing a subject, I need to add a subject to fix it. So here in this case, the subject was he. Could have been whatever I was talking about. Could have been my grandma. Could have been the entire class went down or whatever. Here we have the old red truck. It's incomplete. What is missing? It's missing the predicate. So there's no verb telling me what's going on. And there's no rest of the sentence. It's just telling me there's a thing. So add the predicate. In this case, we wrote the old red truck drove down the street. And drove is your verb, right? If you just said the old red truck drove, not sure that'd be a complete sentence. It might be. After I go. Now, this is tricky because there's a subject and there's a verb. So some people might go, well, it's got the two main things it needs. But if you look at it, after I go, there's a bunch of stuff. After I go where? After I go do what? What? This after, that's one of those subordinating conjunctions that we talked about that indicates that there's more needed, okay? This is an incomplete thought. We need to add a main clause to create a complete thought. So for example, after I go, please go do the dishes, okay? So these are huge, okay? Look for these sentence fragments. The other really, really big problem I find is run-on sentences. We've talked a lot about sentences, and I hope that we've done enough that this isn't a problem. But this is the one I also find that people who are used to doing run-on sentences, they're really not sure how to fix it. So I wanted to kind of walk you through, if this is one of the things that you tend to do, where you just kind of put all your sentences together and then do one big period at the end and that's it. That isn't what a period's for. A period doesn't mean, okay, I'm done writing. It means I'm done this one small thought, okay? So if you're not sure how to fix it, or I'll talk about the problem first of all. Basically, they keep joining sentences using the words and, or then, or sometimes and then. They might use other ones, but these are the three I find are the most common if you have a problem with writing run-on sentences, okay? So your first job is circle all the thens, the ands, and the and thens that you see. Most times, that is where the sentence should have stopped, right before those things. Put a period right before the word you circled, and put a capital on the word afterwards. And why is that? Well, because you're starting a new sentence. And a new sentence always starts with a capital letter. Just a little hint to the reader so that they know and they notice it, okay? Then read it back to yourself to make sure it makes sense. There are times when these ands or the thens might be totally legitimate. So you don't want to overcorrect and have it end up sounding like nonsense. So we're going to give it a try and see. First, my job is to look for ands, thens, or and then. So first we went to the fair in Dryden, and when we got there, we parked our car, and then we walked around some, and then we went on some rides, and then we went to look at the animals, and then we ate some hot dogs, and then we got tired and went home. Okay, so I'm going to change to a different color just so it's really kind of obvious for you to see, okay? First, we went to the fair in Dryden. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Right there is my sentence. I can put a little period right there. I'm good. And I probably just don't even need that and. Just cross it off. And now the when becomes a capital because it's the first letter in a sentence. When we got there, we parked our car. Okay, I'm going to put a little comma there because this is an introductory material. Then we parked our car. Oh, and then. So that's the end of our sentence. We're going to cross this off. I don't need it. It's all done. What am I going to do with this part? I have to turn it into a capital letter, right? And why? Because it's the beginning of a new sentence. We walked around some. I'd put a period because I have the and then there. Also, I probably would add a little bit there. But anyways, what do I do here? I turn it into a capital letter. Oops, for a sentence beginning. Sorry, it's kind of messy. Hang on, I'm just going to erase that so I can still see what's underneath. Okay, and then we went on some rides. Okay, what do I put here? My period to show the sentence is over. Cross off the and then. This becomes your capital. We went to look at the animals. And then cross it off. We don't need it. Period. And this becomes our capital letter because it's the beginning of a sentence. We ate some hot dogs. Period. Cross that off. We don't need it. This, what happens to it? Becomes a capital. We got tired and went home. Okay, I wanted to talk about this one. This might be fine. We got tired is pretty short sentence, so I could see why you might want to turn this into a compound sentence, which is basically what they've done. We got tired but I would add we went home then, okay? You could still do it. You still could turn it into two different sentences. We got tired, period. But then you would still have to add the we in front because it doesn't quite work. So either way is okay. We got tired, we went home, or we got tired, period, we went home. Okay, so occasionally the and will make sense. The other time the and would make sense would be if you had a list of things and the last item you usually put and in front of. So for example, if I had we, and I'm sorry, I'm using the pencil because yesterday when I tried to use the typing, it just kind of kicked me off the program. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. We need milk. Comma, oops, terrible comma, sorry. Eggs. And then we put and, let me say bread. Okay, so why is this and valid and totally acceptable where these ones were excessive? Well, here we were just kind of joining sentence plus sentence plus sentence. When you're writing a compound sentence, you're only joining two sentences. You can't just join everything together into one ginormous compound sentence. So that's one thing. This is a sentence, but bread by itself isn't a sentence. And it totally is valid because this is a list: milk, eggs, and bread. We wouldn't say we need milk, eggs, bread. In English, that doesn't quite sound right. For some reason, we always put the and at the end, right before the last item on a list. I don't really know why. It's just considered good writing. I'm sure there's a reason, but we always do it that way. So that and would be totally valid. Okay. Sometimes if you were using the then, it might be valid in a journal, like first I did this and then I did that, but you would only use it once. You wouldn't keep using it over and over and over again because we can only join 2 sentences in a compound sentence. We don't join 5 or 6 or 10 or anything, okay? Okay, basic punctuation. I know that this is stuff you probably already know, but I wanted to go over it just to make sure. Okay, highlighter. Okay. If a sentence is simply giving information, we use a period. This is the most common punctuation. Everybody knows that one. If a sentence is asking a question, we use a question mark. Now, here's one I find. If people are doing their own writing, they usually know to use a question mark. But when they're going to edit something that someone else wrote, sometimes they're not really sure where the questions are, okay? Because they didn't read it. One way to solve that problem is if you read it out loud, the questions become more obvious. You'll find you kind of automatically realize, oh yeah, that's obviously a question. But here are some clue words that will let you know that it's likely a question. Not 100%. You'd still have to read it and find out for sure. But these are some clues. If it starts with a 5W and the H, it's probably a question. Who, what, when, why, where, or how. For example, how is the work going? Some other really common question words would be if these words below are the first word in the sentence, there is a good chance that those are questions. And the reason is, take a look at these. These are all verbs. And they're verbs of being, most of them. So it's really common for questions to follow that inverted format where the verb comes first. So if you see things like are, is, am, was, were, do, did, or have, there's a good chance it might be a question. If it's not a question, there's a good chance somebody forgot a subject, so you might need to fix it. Are you coming to? Am I tall enough? Were you going to the show tonight? If it just said, we're at the show, that doesn't work. Do you want to do the fireworks? Occasionally, a question sentence might start with a contraction such as weren't, didn't, haven't. For example, haven't you already given him $20? Or didn't you see that movie already? Or weren't you planning to stop at your mom's before you went home? So those ones, they're really just the same as these, except that they're the contractions. These are the positives, these are the negatives. Okay, so those are all clues that you might be looking at a question that needs a question mark. And then for some reason, I don't know why, I somehow forgot to include exclamation points. Okay, we use those for interjections. Like if I said, hey, right, then I would have a question mark or help or fire, right? The other time I use them would be if I was excited, like it's my birthday or get out of here or something like that. It doesn't necessarily come up in the kind of writing that we're doing normally, although it would if you were doing a lot of creative writing, but it can come up, right? These are the 2 most common though. Okay, commas. So a lot of times I find some people really aren't sure how to use commas. And you know what? It's usually not your fault. One of the big things in teaching for the last, gosh, almost 20 years has been the idea that you don't need to teach kids grammar and punctuation and all that kind of stuff because they will just pick it up as they do lots of writing. But what we've really discovered after doing a lot of studies is that You know what? That actually isn't true. And unfortunately, a lot of students didn't get taught things they should have got taught. And that may have happened in your class. You may have never heard anybody discuss a comma in your life. You've seen them, you know they're there, you instinctively know how to read them, but you may not be sure what to do with them for writing. So if you do, I apologize. I don't mean to be going over stuff you already know, but these are one of the punctuation marks I find is most confusing to people because there are a lot of places a comma can come. This is kind of the basics, okay? To separate the words in a date, Monday, comma, August 15th, comma, 2023. To separate the words in a list, please buy eggs, comma, flour, comma, milk, comma, and bread. Otherwise, it might sound like some strange thing that's like an eggs, flour, milk stuff. To separate the words in address, I live at 34 Front Street, comma, Sioux Lookout, comma, Ontario. Now, this is a pattern. Whenever you see an address, you guys always know these first words are the city. Are the street or the avenue. The next word is the city. The next word is the province. So we separate them with the commas. We also use it to separate adjectives. If there's more than one adjective, we usually separate the adjectives, okay? I saw a beautiful, comma, old, comma, big house. Now, we don't use a comma between the adjective and the noun. If it had just said big house, we wouldn't put a comma there, okay? To separate the two simple sentences or the main clauses in a compound sentence. I love to ride bikes, comma, and I love to swim, period. I don't find people do this as often as they could, but that could just be because, again, we kind of stopped teaching about commas for a while. We also use it to separate introductory material that comes before the main clause or the complete sentence. So we did a little bit of this the other day. Yesterday, comma, I went to the store. Now, if yesterday came at the end, I went to the store yesterday, there would be no need for a comma. But because it's coming before the main sentence, that little comma kind of tells you, oh, we aren't in the full sentence. This is just a little extra part. Okay, and that happens down here too when we're doing complex sentences, where part of the sentence as a whole, main clause, totally could stand on its own, but the other part couldn't. If I wanted to buy a car, could not stand on its own. It doesn't make any sense. It needs more. So to indicate that, I put a comma there. It's kind of like the yesterday. It's giving me a little bit of an introduction to the main sentence, okay? There are some more detailed uses of comma, but that seems like enough for that. Quotation marks. Wanted to go over this because this is another one of those fussy things that a lot of times did not get taught. So when you want to quote the exact words that somebody has said, you put beginning and ending quotes around their words like this, okay? And you can see double quotes. I couldn't wait to go to the concert, double quote. If you are writing this instead of typing it, you make the first one look like this. It kind of curves around. And then the other one kind of curves the other way. I think of it like two hands. They're like the hands are kind of holding the quotes in the middle. Okay. We often add a tag to tell the reader who is talking, who, and how they are talking. And we put a comma after the tag before the quotation starts. For example, John said, comma, the concert is tonight. And you can see the two quotation marks. If that's the end of the whole sentence, put the period inside the quotes. So period, then quote. You don't need another period on the outside. That period kind of does for the whole sentence. That's just fine. Now, if the tag comes after the quote, it can get a little more complicated. So we replace the period. We don't use a period this time because if I put a period here, it would look like that's a sentence. And then I would need another period here. It looks like it's two really short sentences. And this one would be a fragment, Beth said. So we don't put a period there. We put a comma instead. And again, it's inside before the quotes happen. Okay. But if they asked a question or if they were excited, those would be perfectly fine to use. For some reason, we kind of understand that that means the words, not the whole sentence. So that is kind of the trickier spot. If you're having trouble remembering, one easy way is just put the tag in front. Okay. We don't usually put quotations all by themselves without explaining who is talking. Okay. All right. The next assignment. Oh, so all of that was about, hang on, where is it? You're looking at that in order to edit this paragraph. Okay. So you're going to correct the errors and then you're going to handwrite or computer copy it and send me the good copy. Okay. Send me all the fixes that you did. Okay. Hang on. All right. Assignment 16 is a journal entry about the writing process. This is worth 10 marks. So this lesson was all about the writing process and what it can mean for you as a writer. Please take some time to reflect on the importance of following the writing process and the writing you do on a regular basis. Use the following questions and information to guide your writing for this assignment, and your journal entry will need to be at least 6 sentences in length. I would strongly suggest doing more. Unless you write very detailed sentences, I would try and write at least 3 sentences for each question myself. Number 1 says, comment on the use of the writing process for assignments. Provide some examples and anecdotes. Anecdotes are personal stories about your own writing at home and at school or at work. So you might say, well, I did some brainstorming about this, or I did a rough draft of this, or whatever you did that you used the writing process. Try and provide some examples. Now, I'm going to give you a little off the cuff information here. Every now and again, I might have somebody say, I never write. I don't do any writing whatsoever. You know what? I don't live at your house, so I won't know. It really does not matter to me if you make up an imaginary story about how you might write if you did more writing, okay? So don't just answer nothing, even if that's the truth. Please, if you didn't do any writing this week or you never do any writing besides these assignments, by all means, make something up there, okay? Sorry, but it's just the truth. Now, I put a little star here because both of these, they really need you to look at the writing process. Probably this one does too, but anyways, which step of the writing process seems to be more important to you personally than the others? And the example they gave was revising, but you don't have to choose revising. It could be anything, okay? Explain why you feel this way. And then number 3 says, which steps of the writing process do you feel you need to improve on? And how can your teacher help you to improve in these areas? Okay. Quick review of the writing process. We did pre-writing, we've done drafting, we've worked on revising and editing. Publishing in our case would be sending it to me, because once you've done that, you can't really take it back. Publishing in the real world would be you send it to a magazine or you send it to a publishing house, or let's say you made a poster and you put up on the wall at the Northern store. Well, once it's up there, it's up. That's what everyone's seeing, right? So you always want it to be good, because if you put, say, the wrong date, everyone's going to be going the wrong day to whatever event you've made the poster for. All right, so you need to think about these as you're answering questions 2 and 3. Question 2 asks you to explain which stage of the process do you think is the most important and explain why. It does not matter. There is no right answer. Whatever one you think is most important, go for it. Explain why you think it's most important. Please try and write at least 2 to 3 sentences here. For question 3, this is the one that I think is a bit tricky. It's asking you to think about your own process, and that's kind of tricky, I find. It says, which steps do you feel you need to improve on? So which steps in the writing process? And how can your teacher help you improve? So sometimes the best way to answer this question is to think about which step is the hardest one. If one step or one stage seems especially difficult, then that may be the main place that you need to improve your skills or your understanding. Now, where it says, how can the teacher help you to improve? That may seem like a trick question, but it isn't really intended to be. everybody finds different things to be difficult or confusing. So I don't always know the best way to help you. It's totally okay to write something like, I find this step really confusing because, and then you tell me why. Or I find it really hard to, and then tell me what part is hard. If there's a way specifically that I can help you, this is where you'd put this, okay? And this helps me like figure out my lessons, right? The lessons aren't all written out ahead of time. The assignments are, but not my lessons. So as I see what problems could be occurring, I have the chance to address things, to teach things. So this is where you can help me and really help yourself. If you tell me, hey, I always have a hard time with the brainstorming, I need some more ideas on how to brainstorm, great, I can do a whole bunch of stuff on brainstorming. Or if you're like, I really need some more work on revising. Can you please explain that again? I need some better ideas. I get really confused. Awesome. I'd be happy to. So this question is not intended to be a trick. It's intended to help both of us and to give me some ideas on what to do going forward, okay? This is the mark sheet for lesson 4. Lesson 4 is really just 3 little assignments, okay? Assignment 14, sit down is right, is where you answer the questions on that song/poem that we read. Assignment 15 is where you edit the paragraph, and I tried to give you some ideas on how you could edit the paragraph. And then assignment 16 is reflecting on the journal entry or the writing process, okay? Tomorrow we will tackle looking at lesson 5. And lesson 5 is, I believe, the end of unit 1. I don't know if we'll get it all covered tomorrow or if we'll need to kind of tackle some things on Monday, but we'll be looking at your big culminating assignment. So if you haven't had a chance to, please take a moment to look ahead to that so you know what we're discussing and the whole conversation makes sense to you. It is a major assignment that counts for a good chunk of your mark. Please make sure you've taken a moment or two to look at that. Thank you so much for being here today and listening. I look forward to your emails and to seeing your work. By all means, please give me an email if you need some help with something. You're also free to call me, but if I'm not there, don't leave messages because my message box is kind of kerflooey right now. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.